I know we never talked about part one of this film on any of previous episodes, but we're going to jump to part two because we just came from the press screening. I know this episode is going to be up a little bit late, but we are fans. I got my shirt.
Yeah, I took my spice this morning and got my book. What is it? We're going to start from 75% of the way through it.
This is yeah. And I got my soft covers, but my parents have it. So yeah, we just came out a couple days ago of the press screening, and we're going to talk about Dune Part 2.
Hey, welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hey, you found us. Thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you. Continue to support the show. Hey, hit the like and subscribe button. Tell your friends about the show. It's a little thing you can do, but it's a big thing for us. We mean it. We want to get up to 500 by the end of the month. We really appreciate it. Both Kyle and I are members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics reviews as well as ours. What? Yeah, we do have a Patreon. Check that out, man. We got some great content and great deals and opportunities. You can tell us what movies we can review on a future episode. Of course, a shout out to you as well. Today, I'm going to talk about Dune 2. Took us a while to get there. Should have came out in the fall, but it's here now.
All right, after joining the Fremen, Paul Atreides makes every effort to ingratiate himself within the community, while his Bene Gesserit mother, Lady Jessica, embraces the prophecy her people put in place to keep them both alive. As the Fremen attack and destroy numerous pieces of Harkonnen spice equipment, the Baron is forced to appoint his psychopathic nephew, Feyd-Rautha, to bring the fight back to the Fremen.
Overall, I think a lot of people who are really fans of the series, the books, I think they really would enjoy this aspect, this interpretation. Denis Villeneuve spends more quality time in the desert more than any other time of an adaptation of the movie. A lot of them play into the politics and the dynamics of the imperialism and the, of that. But this actually is more concentrated on what's going on in the desert more than ever. I really like that about that.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think is a good reason why they did this in two parts. You go into a situation like this, and
3 parts.
I criticize the fact that the first film actually seems to go about 60-70% of the way through the book, but that gives him the ability to expound upon a number of things. There are things in the book, like seen in the trailer, the worm riding sequence, that is, I feel, covered over in like a couple paragraphs, but we're given the chance to breathe and really take in the momentous occasion of it. Right. It's weird to say that the movie is like on par with the first one. Like it didn't exceed expectations because my expectations were so damn high.
Right. It maintains definitely, because it's filmed together, it definitely feels like we just came from part one. This is not thoroughly adapted from the book. There's a lot of things omitted. There's the dynamics of the Harkonnens, and Baron's death is a little bit different. Also, there's nothing talking about the Charm Company, which is if you read the book, it is littered with how you get in part of the stock of the Charm Company and all that stuff. And that's kind of washed away. Yeah. I'm really impressed with it. Like I said, if you're really a fan of the show and a fan of the series, you really appreciate it. I don't know if you're just a fan of film, you're going to have that same elevation.
I think if you like the first one, I don't think this is going to win people over. If you walked out of the first Dune, you're like, God, what a bore! I can't believe they're talking about sand all the time.
Yeah.
If you walk into second Dune, you're not going to be changed in your mind. I don't feel, unless your biggest problem with the first film was the lack of action.
Yeah.
Because this film does deliver on that. It does feel like that Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, where the first half was so much about story and the second half was so much about culmination, action, epic climax. And I think that's a closer approximation here than I've seen people comparing it to the It films. It's not really like the It films at all and how they were separated. This is definitely a setup and payoff situation.
Definitely invested into Paul Atreides' doubt that he is the chosen. Obviously, he has a lot of backup from the leaders of the Fremen. But also, we know if you watch the continue the saga, Paul's story doesn't really have a happy ending after this book. He actually goes back to the desert because he feels like he hasn't accomplished what he needs to be. He almost like an old man screaming at clouds in the desert, eventually, and the sequel. So we understand his infatuation of becoming that part of the culture, immense of it, and having severe doubt. You don't get that in the David Lynch. You get this Paul that I'm a champion now and I get to take it over and I'm everything. Where in the book, it's not so much that he's doing a dynamic play to maintain his bloodline, but also he feels like his responsibility, who he really is going back to the desert.
See, I think that's where Villeneuve really, he showcases the ability as an adaptation machine. He is able to. I think there are things in the book that if I read them, when I read them in the book, I said that's not going to work in a movie situation. I think that's going to be troublesome. I think that's going to be difficult, and I think that's where he comes into play here. Is I don't think necessarily the story he's telling here of Paul's story that the Chom Company is as important to Paul's journey. I don't think they said that
or how we get invested with the Spacing Guild. We don't even talk about that. Yeah,
but like Stephen McKinley Henderson, who played Thufir Hawat, does not appear in this film. He was originally cast, so I feel like they might have cut his scenes. I feel like his character is not as important in this back half as to what the story that Denis is trying to tell. I'm also at a loss because Tim Blake Nelson was cast in an undisclosed role, and I still can't figure out who the hell he played. So I feel like his scenes were cut. But there was a number of things where I think choices were made to make this work in a movie form with things that would not have worked. And so I think if you're going and you want a literal translation, you want it being read out of the book, this might not fully satisfy that, but that's not the point of making a good movie. It is not about copying down the book. It is about making the book work in movie form.
Definitely sound editing is wonderful, and the sound is really important. Obviously, we saw it in Adobe Theater, so your chairs would shake when the dynamics. But a really crisp dynamic. It is the punch that really enjoyed about this movie, as well as cinematography. Once again, is just fantastic.
Yeah, Greg Fraser is becoming that cinematographer. Who I just like. Well, not doubting him ever again. So
no, yeah, and you get that when they're attacking like the spice mining craft. That whole dynamic. Not part of the book, not even important, but it takes a lot of time in the movie.
Yeah, I think it's important for viewers. I think it's something that we can gloss over quicker in the book, just having that ability to breathe in it. I've seen this a lot mentioned, but it's very true. I think a lot of the films that are nominated for Oscars this year are thanking their stars that Dune got pushed, because especially when you look at the technical categories, now Oppenheimer has a better chance. I think a lot of these films have a better chance at winning these categories without Dune in the playing field. I also wanted to highlight, I think Hans Zimmer's score here is far and above, like almost twice as good, 3 times as good as the one in the first one. And I love the score in the first film. I just think he accesses some new themes and expands upon some new musical cues that he used in the first film. And I think it is a more tragic and yet heavy score that I think really fits. It was a cold and calculated score in the first film. I feel like we've got more of that emotional heft that is at this story that we're seeing here.
A little bit of the person that's going to be Paul's daughter. We saw her, a little snippet of her being adult. I thought she would be great as the princess. We get Florence Pugh as the princess. My one little criticism of it, and you can comment on it, I don't think it's the right casting for Christopher Walken of this role. It kind of takes me out of it a little bit. I like that guy. I really do like all his movies, but I'm thinking, and when I see there's somebody else can fill that spot and not do as many dynamic punches, because we're expecting some kind of a gag and anything. That's my only really minus of the movie. I just don't feel of him playing the Emperor has the delivery punch that we need for him to be this character, who's almost wimpy in the movie.
Well, and I'm purely being selfish because I want more Walken in every movie.
Right.
I think I like him in the scenes that he's in. He's not in a ton of the movie. He's a foreboding presence around the narrative for a large portion. Yeah. But I think the scenes where he gets to really trade dialogue and trade barbs with some of the other characters, he does strongly. He's not playing the character as he was described in the book. He's not playing him exactly how I saw him in my mind reading the book or even playing the board game, which is great. Yeah. It is funny to note, though, that he is returning to the world of Dune because the song Weapon of Choice that he was in the music video for 20 years ago has several Dune references.
Fat Boy Slim.
And so it's kind of fun to get him seeing him doing the sandworm walk in that music video, and then, of course, not doing it here, I guess.
Yeah, sandworm, there's a wonderful play of chemistry here, and I think that's what's really important. Zendaya and Timothée Chalamet have good chemistry in this movie.
They do. They really do. Yeah.
And then the ensemble cast all have really good chemistry. And if you really want an in-depth story, read the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think this is a case where there's stuff that I wanted more of, like from a purely selfish.
And he does that intentionally. God, I wish I could have more of that.
I wanted more. We kind of were introduced to Jamis in the first film, and he's the person that Paul fights against to the death at the end of that film. And I know that he kind of has this kind of mental connection to him from beyond that kind of permeates in the book a little bit more, and it's not as prevalent in this version of the film. I would have liked more of it because I like the actor who played him. The name escapes me. There's just things I wanted more of, but we have to think to ourselves too, it's such a rarity that we would get. We're not getting a director's cut, Villeneuve already said, but we already got that because we got a 5.5-hour Dune story. Yeah. Where prior to that, a studio would have hacked and slashed it down to 2 hours. That's what happened with Lynch's film. Was it originally was 3 hours, got hacked down to 2, and it really would have been hard at 3.
Really would have enjoyed a 9-hour of this.
Yeah, I mean, I could have lived in this world for longer. And as somebody who I know now, I'm going to see this movie in a week with my wife. I'm excited to see it again, which is something you don't often say about 3-hour movies, even if you really love them.
Last shout out before we go: costuming. Wonderful choices. I love that a lot of times you see the adaptations of this series, they go super gaudy, almost military with the costumes. This is very and forward. It's very simplistic. It's deceivingly simplistic of the costuming. Obviously, I'm not talking about like the Fremen and everything, and that costuming is wonderful as well. But like just the Emperor's outfits and everything, the Baron's outfits, you think they usually get out in here. Here is this simplification, and that's interesting play. I do like the kind of the Colosseum goes black and white kind of a thing. Yeah.
I love that, and I actually particularly wanted to shout that out because I think that's some of my favorite sequences in the film. Is that there's really that sense that we go kind of really cold colored, black and white for a lot of those Colosseum sequences. I particularly like that the fireworks are ink blots because it highlights the signing of contracts that the Imperium and that the Harkonnens are so all about.
And then he's bathing in some kind of like ink.
Yeah, and I think there's some really interesting ways in which he uses the symbolism, he uses the color palette there, because the Colosseum stuff is the newest stuff that we see in the film.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff, the desert stuff, the Arrakis stuff, even some of the Harkonnen stuff, we kind of have seen in the first film. It's great. It's just we have seen it before. The Colosseum stuff is where we're able to really branch out and experiment with some new stylistic choices that I think actually quite worked.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of our review of Dune 2? What would you like us to do? We can probably go back and talk about Dune 1, or if we can do David Lynch's Dune, or Sci-Fi did another version of their Dune. We can talk about that as well. Let us know.
Yeah, so many Dunes, so little time. Yeah, let us know your thoughts on the film down below. And if you would like to see Denis Villeneuve return to the franchise for another installment, or do you think another director would be fun to revisit? Or maybe what's your favorite sci-fi novel that's never been adapted correctly? Let us know in the comments section. And while you're down there, please like and subscribe, man. There's 2 free things you can do, and we really appreciate it. Like Nick said, we want to get to that 500 subscribers. It's a good milestone for our channel. We want to keep growing.
Yes.
Keep showing. So thank you guys for joining us. You can check out my film reviews, including my early review of Dune Part 2, where I go into some of the thoughts we've talked about here and some other places. That is available on goatfilmreviews.com.
Let my knife chip and shatter.